Today we're looking at conversions within metric or measurement systems, so metric and imperial actually. So what you can do and what most people do is use a conversion app. I mean, if you're in a field where you're using or where you're converting a lot, you'll tend to have things memorized. And for us, we usually have things memorized for our metric conversions. But if you're in the field of construction, you'll probably have a lot of things memorized in terms of imperial measurement units. So this is our lesson for today. So you're going to want to fill in your sheet um, in your duotang, and you can use a conversion app, okay, or an internet search engine. So you can actually type in, what is 1 kilometer in meters. So hopefully just through going through math classes, we can think about how big a meter is, right? Like a meter stick, and recognize that a kilometer is really, really far. And we hopefully will remember from lessons in the past that it's 1,000 meters is equal to 1 kilometer, or we have 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. So next we have centimeters in decameters. So 1 decameter, and how many centimeters is that? And that is 10 units. And in 1 meter, so that meter stick, how many centimeters do we have? We have 100 centimeters in that 1 meter. And in terms of 1 centimeter, how many millimeters are in 1 centimeter? That is 10. So again, you can look that up. You can use a conversion app on your phone, or you can Google search it, and you'll be able to convert between those two things. So you don't need to have them memorized. If you don't have them memorized, that's fine. So same thing here. These are our imperial measure conversions. We're going to take a look at converting between our units in imperial measurement. So if I have 1 foot, I can Google how many inches is that 1 foot equal to? And it's actually 12 inches that are in 1 foot. And you might know that just because that's how we typically measure height of somebody. So we'd say, I'm 5 foot 7 inches, okay? And we wouldn't get to 6 feet until we had 5 foot 12 inches. Okay, so then we have 1 yard. How many feet are in a yard? And that is 3 feet. And then we have a mile. Again, that's a really long distance, right? And how many feet in a mile? There's a lot of feet in a mile. It's 5,280. Then we're going to take a look at weighing and measurements for weight. So if we have 1 pound, we want to know how many ounces, and we have 16 ounces in 1 pound. When we think about pounds and tons, so 1 ton is actually equal to 2,000 pounds. And now we're going to take a look at measurement of maybe liquid or some solids. You might use these when you're baking, right? So we typically use tablespoons and teaspoons. So 1 tablespoon is actually 3 teaspoons. Okay, when we talk about a fluid ounce, so 1 ounce of fluid, that is equal to 2 tablespoons. So 1 cup is equal to 8 ounces. So again, when I'm baking, I can see that 1 cup measure is equal to 8 ounces on the Corningware or the glass measuring cup that I'm using. 1 pint is equal to 2 cups. And we have 1 quart is equal to 2 pints. And then 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. So again, we can Google all of these conversions, and we can look them up. But what we want to be able to do is, knowing these basic conversions between these units, can we answer some other questions? Okay. So just to summarize too, our imperial measure is a bit different because it's not in multiples of 10. So our metric system is always in multiples of 10 as we go from, centimeters to decameters to meters, etc. Okay. But imperial measurement, although it's not used very much in Canada, we do still use imperial measure, again, when I'm baking or if I'm building. And because we're also right beside the United States, it's important to know what these measure means. So for example, gasoline is sold by the gallon. Okay. So I've already mentioned this, but it is important to note again that when we're working in the field of building materials and supplies, imperial measurements are often used. Now let's take a look at how we use these conversions to help us solve some measurement problems. Okay, so the first example we have is how many centimeters long is a room that is 12 meters wide. So one way to solve this is I know that 100 centimeters is in 1 meter. So I can write down the um, the ratio of centimeters to meters, and then I can write an equivalent ratio beside it with 12 meters on the bottom. So if I have meters on the bottom, I keep meters on the bottom, and I can put an unknown up for the centimeters. I don't know how many centimeters for 12 meters. So when I have equivalent ratios, there's a couple different ways we can go ahead and solve. We can cross multiply, or I can think about what is my multiplier to get from 1 to 12. And in this case, to get from 1 to 12, I had to multiply by 12. So I would have to do the same to the top. So I'd have to multiply that 100 by 12 to get the top of that equivalent fraction. Okay, so that's one way to do it, is take a look at that ratio and see what that common multiplier is. The other way is to cross multiply. Okay, and when I cross multiply, I'm going to have the 100 times the 12 is equal to the 1 times the x. And I just will isolate x, okay? And we know that 100 times 12 is equal to 1200, so that x is equal to 1200. Again, you can do it the first way, where we take a look at that common multiplier, or you can cross multiply, which in some cases is a little bit easier. So therefore, 12 meters is 1200 centimeters. Okay, let's take a look at our next example. We have how many tablespoons do you need for a recipe calling for 3 quarts? Okay, so this is a little bit different. A couple things, a couple ways that you can approach this. So the first way is to think about or try and figure out how many tablespoons are in a quart. Okay, so we don't have that as part of our table that we had worked out already. So what we would do is we would recognize that we would have 2 tablespoons in 1 ounce. Okay, then we recognize that we have 8 ounces in 1 cup. Then we recognize that we have 2 cups in 1 pint. And then we have 2 pints in 1 quart. Okay, and that's how we would go from tablespoons to quarts. And you're probably thinking, well, I still don't get it. I don't understand how I go from one tablespoon to quarts. So if I have 2 tablespoons in 1 ounce, then I would multiply that by 8 to get a cup. Then I would multiply that by 2 to get pints, and then I would multiply it by another 2 to get quarts. So in fact, I would be multiplying by 2 times 8 times 2 times 2. Okay, so I would have 64 tablespoons is equal to 1 quart. Okay, you could also just Google how many tablespoons in 1 quart. And so if I know that 1 quart is equal to 64 tablespoons, then to get 3 quarts, I would have to multiply by 3, or I can write it as that equivalent fraction, right? I could have 64 tablespoons, 1 quart, is equal to how many over 3 quarts? And I can multiply by 3. So when I multiply that 64 by 3, 3 quarts is equal to 192 tablespoons. Okay, so the rest of this sheet is actually practice. We're going to do the first one together though, and we're going to take a look at this because I want you to practice showing some work. So this first question here is converting millimeters into centimeters. Okay, so again, the first thing I need to do is see what the relationship is between millimeters and centimeters. And I know that the relationship is 10 millimeters to 1 centimeter. Okay, so again, you can look up the relationship between millimeters and centimeters and set up your ratio. And then I'm going to write my equivalent ratio where I have 5,678 millimeters on top of X number of centimeters. Okay, we're not sure. And so then here I can cross multiply. So I would have 5,678 is equal to 10 times X. And to get the X by itself, I would divide both sides by 10. So I would get 567.8 is equal to X. So we'd have 567.8 centimeters, okay? Or I can recognize another way to do this is moving from millimeters to centimeters, we would divide by 10, right? So I would divide by 10 to get centimeters. So there's a lot of different ways to think about equivalent ratios. Again, I encourage you to use a search engine to find those relationships between units. So the next one that you'll do, you could search how many centimeters in a meter, okay, to find that relationship, and then see, well, how many centimeters in 3 meters. And you can write out your work on a separate piece of paper and fill in your chart, okay? You can check your answers online. They've been posted for you. And any ones that you are struggling with, just make sure to ask me in class and I will help you work through them.